Education in South Africa, apartheid still in existence. When the apartheid government came into power in South Africa in 1948, it saw the schooling system as the major vehicle for the propagation of its beliefs. For the period of apartheid's duration, schools were one of the system's stark symbols. In 1994, after almost 50 years of apartheid, South Africa became a formal democracy. Today, as a new and a democratic government seeks to repair and reconstruct the fabric of South Africa's ravaged past, it is to the schooling system that much attention has turned. The heritage that confronted this new government was complex. As a result of history, South Africa was and still remains a country in which the inscriptions that divide race, class, culture, and religion run deep. Prior to the democratic elections of 1994, the new government had a new educational reform agenda. One of the key focus areas of this reform has been linked to the issues of equity and equality. While the new government succeeded in providing equality in education by providing free access to schools, it failed in providing equity to all its citizens. This inequity was reflected in the spending, in the quality of education received, and in the curriculum making. Spending and challenges: lack of investment in black education. Compared with most other countries, education gets a very large slice of the public pie, usually around 20% of total state expenditure. More money is always needed to address the huge backlogs left by more than 40 years of apartheid education. Under that system, white South African children received quality schooling virtually for free, while their black counterparts had only Bantu education. Although today's government is working to rectify the imbalances in education, the apartheid legacy remains. The greatest challenges lie in the poorer rural provinces occupied by blacks like the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Schools are generally better resourced in the more affluent provinces such as Gauteng and the Western Cape, which are occupied by whites. There is still differential per capita spending, with the poorest provinces having the lowest student expenditures. High rate of illiteracy. This situation led to the fact that 65% of whites 20 years or older have a high school or higher qualification, with only 14% among blacks. Access to education. Of what quality? Even though 99.7% of South African children were in school, the quality of teaching remains poor, especially in the poor states resided by blacks. South Africa ranked 137 out of 150 countries in math and science, and that although it spends 6% of its GDP on education. It was one of the bottom 25 performers on the African continent in education. The selection of a common curriculum in South Africa, a racist curriculum. The selection of a core curriculum in South Africa is founded on policies which discriminate against blacks on the basis of their cultural differences from whites. Act 110 is an act that decrees the formation of a tricameral system of parliament in which whites, East Indians, and coloreds have representation, while blacks are excluded under the pretext that they have political representation in their indigenous nation states. As black children constitute the majority of students in South Africa, this exclusionary decree has had serious implications on black South Africans' involvement in educational policy making. Act 110 that was passed in 1983 is merely an extension or a modernization of apartheid ideology on the philosophy of Christian national education, which has guided educational policy in South Africa for decades. Articles 14 and 15 of the South African Constitution distinguished between own affairs and general affairs and led to the creation of 4 separate departments of education within South Africa. 3 of these departments serve the needs of whites, coloreds, and Indians, respectively. They are known as Department of Education and Culture and are administered by the own affairs bureaucracies of each group. The fourth department, the Department of Education and Training, is especially intended to serve the needs of blacks in the so-called homelands and urban areas of South Africa. Despite claims that the administration and control of education falls under the auspices of one minister, the Minister of National Education and Development, and that syllabi are virtually the same across all population groups, in many subjects different examinations are employed based on the racial group to which they are directed. Much against the popular plea for one decentralized education department, the government increased its bureaucratic style of control over education by appointing advisory and management bodies which generally had no credibility among South Africans. Cultural differences have been exploited to further justify the policy of separate but equal. Who participates in the curriculum selection process? All of South Africa's cultural groups are not represented nor taken into account in the process of selecting the core curriculum. The overemphasis of a single culture in the curricular selection process in South Africa is the method of choosing school textbooks. All the representatives involved in the selection of textbooks used in South African schools are whites. The books are written by whites and they are published by white-owned publishing companies. The process of selecting the curriculum for all South Africans has contributed to the serious discontent among the disenfranchised black majority. The violent political conflicts that have characterized South African society in recent years are the fruits of overemphasizing cultural variables and differences in education and other aspects of national life. A reasonable selection of curriculum in post-apartheid South Africa can be said to occur when the people for whom the educational policies are intended are afforded the opportunity of participating in the curriculum. All cultures should participate in the writing of the curriculum and should be present in the curriculum. This situation reminds us of the situation in the United States, where people of color are still denied equity in education by not representing the culture of all people of color in the curriculum, which led to a curriculum not relevant to the students who end up failing in schools. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done in South Africa before they really celebrate the post-apartheid era. Same thing could be said about education in the United States before we declare that we are a democratic nation.